leave, or it's so wonderful you want to see it again. We'll record it, and in the next 24 hours, we should have it up on our YouTube channel for those who want to see it. Reminders for folks that are online with us today. If you can do us a favor and just mute your microphones if you're not speaking. That'll make it easier for other folks to either join in or hear what's going on. The chat feature is open. So we will confirm that the chat feature is open. Yep, the chat feature is open for you guys, so that if there's any questions that you have, please feel free to put them in the chat. Mrs. Grassi is going to be monitoring the chat area. So if you have a private message that you wanted to send, please send it to her, because I won't see that chat if it's in the private chat for me. Thank you for those who've submitted some of your questions in advance. The goal of these sessions, if you guys have been here before, is to really give you an update on some important things that are happening at school and then answer any questions that you guys may have. So our goal by the end of this is we will either answer or try to answer questions that you have. And we'll go, we have a presentation prepared for you, but throughout that presentation, if you have questions, please ask. We'd like this to be an interactive forum. I know Zoom doesn't always feel that way. But anybody in person or anybody on Zoom who has questions, please let us know. And then if you have questions that pertain just to your child or to a very specific circumstance, let us know that too, and we can kind of address that maybe outside the Zoom to get that question. So we'll try to address things that pertain to everyone. As I mentioned, we'll upload this to the YouTube channel and have it available for you later. So again, looks like we've got our folks that were waiting no longer waiting. So thank you for joining us. Welcome to our Coffee with the Principal to keep you informed and involved. Today's session, the main topic of today's session is focusing on survey results. And those survey results are the results of the California Healthy Kids Survey and the LCAP survey that were administered to students and to parents and to our staff. And so the results of that survey closely mirror our LCAP, which is our Local Control Accountability Plan. And that's our 3-year plan that guides our budget and guides our actions and guides our staffing. And that 3-year plan has 4 goals to it. And the questions, we kind of try to take the high umbrella overarching kind of responses from there and share those with you. So I am going to get in here and pull up that survey for you guys. And go through that. So I'm assuming you're seeing my screen. Is that working right now? Perfect. All right, let me get into a more of a presentation mode here. Okay. We're trying to get to a presentation mode here. Is there any reason why this present is not present? I'm going to go up to that button then. Yeah. Okay. Put it under there. Nice. It is good to have somebody around that knows what they're doing. So thank you, Mrs. C. All right. So we are going to go through here. Is that looking about right on your screens? Yes.
Sorry.
Are you seeing the presentation on your screens? Okay. Thank you guys for your patience. You're good? Okay. All right. So we are going to go over the LCAP data. For those of you who are at the board meeting, this was in a little bit more detail. So there is some additional information that we've collected. And then this is the key information that we have from those 4 LCAP goals. And so as you'll see, we put in a little response rate slide. Is that coming through?
Yeah, I just have a weird screen, so I want to see.
Okay. So we have a weird response. response rate screen, or weird issue and a response rate screen that kind of talks about, I'm not too sure why it's not showing up here. That's frozen. Okay, for them, sorry. Yeah, we are hitting some technical stuff today, so our apologies to you. But there is a response rates screen, and for those of you guys who can't see it quite yet, Mrs. Z is going to get that up for you. We looked at how much of our school community was responding, and we had strong response rates among our California Healthy Kids survey. That was the first survey that we submitted that had to do with school climate. And we had, out of all of our school families, 41% responded. So almost half of our school families responded to the survey. We had about half of our staff, 46%, and 83% of our students. The students are a more captive audience, so they're a little bit easier to administer to. But when we did the LCAP survey, which has a lot to do with school satisfaction, we had similar response rates for our students. Almost all of our students took that. About half our staff took that. But our school families were down to only about 16%. And we believe that those surveys were put so close together that there was either survey fatigue or survey confusion. And so when we kind of look at administering surveys that have different purposes, we'll look to space those out a little bit more. The next piece that we're looking at here, and I'm going to disconnect from that. The next piece that we have is the LCAP goals. And those goals are you guys seeing it or not seeing it?
Will you ask if they have the same as presenter window and I can get it?
Okay. If anybody wants to chat or unmute, we're hearing that there's a weird presenter view coming up in that's blocking your ability to see. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. Let me back out of it again. Okay. So I'm gonna stop sharing real quick. All right, we're gonna try to go back into this one more time. Apologies for the delays. Is that looking better? Okay, nice. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your patience. So as you guys may know, that we have 4 overarching goals within our LCAP. The first one is academic achievement. We want to make sure that we are a school with high academic standards, and we want kids performing up to their potential. So we put academic achievement as our #1 goal as our school. Prior to COVID, but especially post-COVID, student wellness was added as a goal. So we now have a student wellness goal, and we'll go into some of the wellness indicators from our students. The third goal has to do with safety and facilities. Basically, are kids safe at school, and do they feel safe at school? And then the fourth piece is parent engagement. We pride ourselves on having really strong parent relationships and involvement. If you were here at Art Day a week ago today, you would see that in full bloom. And we were really pleased that we're starting to get that parent engagement back at school post-COVID. It was hard for parents to be engaged when they weren't allowed to come. And so now we're actually being able to open up and get parents involved, both in activities and in other things that we've got going on at school. The next slide that we have here starts to get into survey results. And we had a question for folks on the LCAP survey about the quality of education here at our school. And it was really a satisfaction survey. And you'll see in these LCAP surveys, it's a 5-point scale. And the percent satisfaction are people that were satisfied or very satisfied with what we're doing. You can see on the quality of education, the staff feels very strongly that we have a strong program, strong quality within our educational program. And then you can see in the parents, both in the middle school parents and the elementary parents, 4 out of 5 are satisfied or extremely satisfied with the program. We are seeing a slight decrease of that satisfaction. And we looked back at our survey results, and we saw that parents were very satisfied when kids were no longer at home. And we have a little bit of a rebound effect. So we are pleased with that 4 out of 5 choose, kind of like the old gum commercials, 4 out of 5 dentists recommend. 80% is a good mark. We're always striving for more. And so as we sort of do that check back, we want to make sure that the quality of our program is strong. And as we move forward, that we continue to make gains to make it better. The next part, and this was a really interesting part, and if those of you who attended our last PTO meeting, we had a really good discussion on it. Our last board meeting had a really good discussion on it. And this is academic rigor. And we realized after we took this and we looked at this, again, we see higher marks from our staff than our parents. And both parent groups were marking the level of rigor as a significant decrease, 16% from the prior year. And what we realized is in our discussion groups is there was different definitions of what rigor is, and there was different expectations of how hard work should be. And what we heard from our teacher groups is there was a challenge balancing student mental health with student academic challenges as far as pushing kids and where is that line and how far can you push. And then we also found out from parents that rigor is much more personalized than programmatic. So they were talking about rigor being finding that appropriate piece for each kid rather than setting the bar super high. So that information is really informative for us as we move forward and we start to tailor programs a little bit more individually for kids' needs and identifying where they're at. We have some internal measures that we're measuring students' progress, but what we realize is we have to have a few more supports in order to personalize that for kids. So very good information for us because we do want to have a rigorous program, but we also want to have kids that are mentally well. Yeah, question.
On average, was it saying it was too hard or too easy?
It didn't say. That was the other piece of it is, it was, are you satisfied with the level of rigor? The focus groups that we had suggested it was too easy as opposed to too hard. But the question didn't say which side of the pendulum that was swinging. Yeah, a very good question though, because when we went through the satisfaction survey and discussed it with the board, we realized that not only are the terms, but the questions leave a lot for interpretation. And so we're looking as we move through these surveys is improving some of the validity within the questions, but also making sure we follow up with results that seem out of the norm so that we understand them a little bit better. You know, a survey on paper and numbers gives you a good guidepost, but it doesn't really help you delve into what's really happening. So, but very good question. Okay, put it in there. Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so feel free if you, we are still teasing that out. So one of the questions that we had for our PTO was, how would you define rigor? And is the school matching the appropriate level of rigor for your child? So if you want to put any answers in the chat, we'll definitely take a look at those too, and that'll help us as far as our feedback. The next goal that we have is on student wellness. And I would look at this one here as like our student wellness dashboard. And so on that California Healthy Kids survey, and these were surveys of students. So these are 5th graders and 7th graders. There's a collection of questions, about 6 to 8 questions that have to do with these first 2 categories, whether kids feel connected to their school and whether kids are experiencing what they consider social emotional distress. So there's a number of questions that come in. It's not a single factor. Number of questions as far as do they have trusted adults? Do they have peer groups that they're comfortable with? And so forth. And so when you kind of look at this connectedness, it kind of tells sort of 2 sides of things. We were pleased on the 5th grade results that we're starting to see some increased levels of connectedness. So you've got about, 83% of the kids feeling connected to their school environment, to their teachers, to their peers. Huge indicator of mental wellness. And so that 4% of which the 5th graders, nearly all of them were included, is an encouraging sign. When we look at the middle school, having only half of the kids in 7th grade reporting that level of connectedness and nearly a 10% decrease, it shows that we are not within, from a wellness standpoint, swinging in the right direction. So I'll go through the others, then we'll kind of recap it a little bit. See similar challenges on this social emotional distress. And so social emotional distress, it's 31% of the kids, so 1/3 experiencing that. It was more like 1/5 last year. We had more about 20%. So you're seeing that increase in kids that are experiencing that on the 7th grade level. really troubling pieces. And when they start talking about kids that have experienced frequent sadness over the last year, about a fifth of our fifth graders, about a third of our seventh graders. And then the most startling statistic that came out from all of the survey stuff was this contemplation of suicide. And then it was, have you considered suicide in the past 12 months? And we've got 23% of our seventh graders that identified as having considered it in the past year. We delved into a lot of these issues, and we were looking at social emotional supports that are provided. And, especially when we talked about a question to staff, we had a 25% increase in satisfaction level of the social emotional supports on the staff side. Like, they realized that we've added a social worker, we've doubled our counseling time. We have proactive programs in place to address student wellness. But when we ask that same question to parents, the parents are seeing 25% less satisfaction. And we believe that's because the parents are seeing that kids still are struggling. And so they may not know of all the programs that we offer at school. And what we learned through this is that we got to make sure that we advertise that, but also take more proactive stance. So when we kind of look at this, we had challenges with mental wellness before COVID. COVID exacerbated that to great levels. And now what we're seeing on the backside of it is students that have gone through a lot of trauma that are not over that trauma, but we're also seeing really negative effects related to social media and how students communicate and interact. Because we saw kids that were pulled apart from one another, interacted through oftentimes unfiltered and unhealthy environments, and then are continuing to do so. And so we've looked at a number of things to mitigate that social media piece. We've contracted with a group called Smart Social that provides monthly workshops for parents, students, and staff on what are the trends in social media, how to set your kids' phones, information on what these can be used in a positive way and the negative effects or the dangerous effects that they have. So we have the educational component. We'll have the on-campus support, some proactive plans here. And then we're also looking at sending out some messaging to parents about how dangerous or destructive social media has been. There's some studies that have come out, and we'll be sharing those with you, so you'll see the statistics on that. But when you looked at student wellness, there was a tremendous drop in student wellness, increase of depression rates and so forth. When social media started, your Facebooks came out and the Instagrams come out, you'll see this spike in challenges for kids, social emotional challenges. And then you'll also see on the data that we'll share with you a secondary spike when these companies started adding like buttons and comments and all that kind of stuff. And so there's a real direct correlation to that. Public Radio just had a story yesterday that was talking about a college that rolled out their access to social media within their network when it came out in stages. So they had different campuses that had different levels, and they were able to track the increase as this stuff came out. And so we're going to be sharing that information with parents. We're going to be sharing this information and drawing a correlation to it. We are going to be encouraging parents to get informed on social media and to consider restricting phone use for their kids. It's a really difficult thing for parents once that genie's out of the bottle. I have 4 kids myself. I know how that goes. But there are parameters and limitations, and there's also parameters and limitations we can put within the school day and make it part of it. We have a policy right now that kids should not be using their phone during the school day without, permission from their teachers, and we're likely to lean to a policy that's going to encourage parents to keep their kids' phones at home and not have them out at all during the school day, at least give them 1/3 of their life where they're disconnected, but encouraging it to be more. And so we'll be looking at that. The last piece that we're doing is on Tuesday, the board voted to have our school district participate in a mass action lawsuit, similar to a class action, but a larger size, against social media companies, your Snapchats, your TikToks, your Facebooks. And the gist of this lawsuit is twofold. It's basically making an allegation, and it's a nationwide lawsuit that's going to be consolidated up in San Francisco. The premise of the lawsuit is twofold. One of them is that the laws that are currently on the books are not protecting our kids, so that there's algorithms within social media that is targeting kids and having very harmful results. And so the main purpose of this lawsuit, at least the reason why we're participating, is to try to put some pressure legally to force social media companies to change their algorithms and to enforce their age restrictions. Because if you get on to them that says, are you 13? Yes, I'm 13, move on. There's no verification process. And so kids are very easily able to tap into things that the companies know full well aren't good for the kids and have set an age restriction, but don't enforce it. And so that's the main outcome of that we're looking for. The secondary piece of that is they are going after these companies for financial damages that could potentially come to the school and some amount of payment to go to mental wellness programs, education programs. While that would be nice, it's really changing the system is probably the biggest piece. There is no cost to the district to be a participant in this. It's a cost recovery model. So the Franz Group, which is the lawyers that we're going in with, they keep 25% of whatever's collected, and the rest gets distributed to schools on a per pupil basis. So if you hear about that, there was a misconception that we were being sued when we kind of announced this at the board meeting, and we are actually on the other side of that, hoping to change the system as far as how it works. So just kind of keep you posted about all of that kind of stuff. Any questions on the social emotional indicators or the wellness stuff we're doing?
What is this? Like, how does this compare to national numbers? How do you look at those?
That was that's a super good question. And if you couldn't hear it online, the question was, how do our numbers compare beyond our school, national numbers or so forth? That was a question that the board had brought up. We haven't been able to research that, but our timeline on researching that is before our next board meeting, which is in about 2 weeks. So we will have that information to come back, and we'll try to include that. You can put a note for us, include that in the messaging that we start putting out to parents. What's interesting about our school site is because we're so small and these surveys are of particular grade levels in a small environment, sometimes the numbers are skewed one way or the other. Because if you look at our 5th and our 7th graders, we've got about 50 to 60 kids in each grade. So when you look at these numbers, you're looking at a very small set. But we're looking at the most important set because these are our kids. But I think it is good for us to compare our kids suffering at a disproportionate rate compared to some others. And on the suicide numbers that I've seen in the past, I haven't seen the current cycle. Ours are higher than the ones that I've seen. So it really makes me concerned. So
at the board meeting, one of the high school parents also mentioned that this is also indicative and kind of a representative of what they're seeing at the high school level as well. So she shared that. Yeah, it's a real sad commentary, and we see this anecdotally as well. So the students are reporting this, and some of these numbers you get from surveying kids. Some answers or whatever. There's a lot of I'm not happy with anything kind of a thing. But most kids aren't going to be putting this kind of stuff on there unless it's how they feel. But we're seeing kids in distress. We see probably on average about 1 suicide assessment a week. So if we have a kid making a statement here at school that they are that they want to commit suicide or commit self-harm, our counselors do suicide assessments with them, and I would say it averages out about 1 a week. So yeah, it's really pretty sad. Predominantly in our upper middle school, 7th, 8th grade, and it's just sad commentary on things, but it's good that we have trained, qualified, caring people to support all of that. But yeah, it's pretty staggering as far as where that mental health goes. Yeah. Okay. So when the students are assessed, are they kind of bringing it back and saying it's mostly from bullying or social media? Are you getting that information?
Yeah, it's mostly social media. There's some kids that have tough home lives, and there's some reflection of that, but a lot of it is social media from the standpoint that we have very, very little, if any, well, I won't say, we have very few instances of physical bullying at school. Like when you kind of think of the bully and the old time bully, the bully would wait for you and take your lunch money and do all that kind of stuff. We see very little of that. We see natural conflicts between kids on the playground that play soccer too rough or do whatever. But where the stuff comes in is you will have individuals that will say mean or hurtful things to people, kind of that traditional verbal bullying. But the impact of it is that historically that happened at school or in a neighborhood or some location, and then the child could go home and be removed from that. Social media does not let them get away from that. So if your child's on a social media site and there's communication that's going back and forth or posts that are being made, that child potentially could be bullied 24/7. And so, or perceive that they are, or look at social media and have unrealistic body images or unrealistic social expectations, or things that are really hurtful that are hard to escape from while they engage. And that's why it's so important for parents, especially as they are young and moving into that realm, to be informed and to regulate it. The biggest challenge on social media has been, as it's rolled out, the kids have always been 2 steps ahead of their parents. And so as far as how they interact and how they can hide information or have multiple accounts or have disappearing screens or whatever the thing is, it has been a situation that as a parent, you're used to saying, I lived a life, I know how it goes, I can tell you how all this works. This has flipped the script on that. And that's why it's really important for parents to be educated as far as how these things work and make it really clear to their kids that they have a phone because you allowed them to have a phone, and it's really your phone and it's really your rules, and really to take that parent role very seriously, because the harms are really that serious. That answer your question? Yeah. Okay. So the next screen that we have right here is talking about social emotional supports. And this is what I referenced earlier. And you can see that when you look at the satisfaction of, do we have enough social emotional supports to meet the needs of our kids? You're seeing that the teachers are recognizing the higher level of support, but still looking at about a 70% satisfaction rate. The parents, to the contrary, on the elementary side, are looking at the same swing back, getting to the same place. So there are elementary students, we talked about the suicidal piece in the middle school. It's emotional regulation and appropriate socialization in the elementary. So it's not just an upper kid issue, it's across the board. And then you're seeing a similar drop from middle school, was about a 70% rate last year, now down to about a 50, similar 20+% adjustment. So there's definitely a perception that these kids have needs that require more support. And we recognize that, and we're looking to move into that. The third goal, more of a traditional safety goal. Hey, do you feel safe at school? Are the kids safe at school? And we looked at the questions to the adults. The really interesting thing that came out here, the unpredictable result is, this is the first time that we've ever surveyed parents, and the teachers and staff historically have always felt very safe here. Ironically, during COVID, when we asked that question, do you feel safe at school? The results were up in these upper 90 stuff. And so that was a real, I think, testament to the fact that teachers do feel safe here. And even if there's things swirling around, there still is a level of safety and security. For the first time ever, we saw the parents, and these are very high numbers. You're looking at about 90% on both counts. But for the very first time, we saw elementary parents rate that satisfaction of safety lower than middle school parents, because oftentimes middle school issues more likely to have the bullying of social media or a physical altercation or something along the lines. We don't have many, but it's more apt to happen in middle school. The elementary parents were ranking that safety just a little bit lower than middle school parents. And the conversations that I've had with parents seem to stem from external factors. So there's a lot of worry. There's a lot of news reports out now of horrific things that have happened in elementary schools, and a fear of what potentially could happen. And so that feeling of safety is really legitimate and real, which is why we've taken some overt steps at school to to try to address some of the physical safety issues. So this year we added lock blocks on all the doors, so classrooms can be locked down very quickly. We put shatterproof film in the windows of the office so that if somebody was going to try to break the windows and come into the school, there's a delay and a slowdown in that. You guys, I'm sure, have seen that we put a controlled entry system in the office. It's not a foolproof system, but it gives one more slowing of progress of people who we don't want to be here. And we've coordinated very closely with law enforcement because what makes us safe and being off the beaten path also makes us vulnerable because we're further from a fast emergency response. So we've taken some steps to talk to, we get police response from San Diego PD, but we have relationships. I meet once a month with Escondido police officers, even though there's not their jurisdiction, they're close enough to us to respond to us. We've communicated with police officers who live in the neighborhood to say, hey, can I keep your number on speed dial if we ever needed somebody quick? So there's some informal steps that we're going through to mitigate the geographic stuff. But every law enforcement piece, people that we talk to, Mrs. D and I attended a conference that was sponsored by FBI, Homeland Security, Secret Service, the DA's office, and the County Office of Ed on how to keep your school safe from active threats. All of them basically talk about training and preparedness, but also having mitigating factors to slow the threat to the point that official response can come in. We were really pleased with the conversations that we've had with all local law enforcement, to a person, to a conversation, in that post-Uvalde and the delay that was seen in that and that anxiety that produces for every parent, that is not the police response we would see here. And then for those of you who saw the more recent shooting that happened at the Christian school, that was the type of response you would expect. A quick response and a quick resolution to neutralize whatever threats that are there. So our main job is to give our staff enough physical protection and enough situational awareness and information so that if we ever had something, we make the best decisions so that we can get law enforcement here to take care of it. So interesting results on that. But like I said, overall, people are feeling pretty safe at school. We look at the student survey results, and they were a little bit of a mixed bag. So what you had on the student survey results is 4th and 6th graders were surveyed, just about every 4th and 6th grader. And you can kind of see 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10 on the results for those. Real high results. And we were really pleased that the 6th graders are seeing such an increase in their feeling of safety here at school. That was good. 8th graders, we are seeing a decrease. We got about 85% that were satisfied with school safety last year, but this year it's about 76%. We think that that dovetails in with some of the mental health feelings as well. So we're looking at that. Looks like we had a couple questions. Yeah, there was a question that had to do on the school safety front. Let me back this up. What were the police doing at school on Tuesday? Yeah, so I can answer that question for you. So we had 2 things happening at the same time, which made people really nervous. One of them was we had a planned lockdown drill. So we had a drill at school that we do. We do one drill every month, and those drills range from fire drills to earthquake drills to shelter in place to lockdowns. Any kind of emergency action, we prepare at least once a month. About a month ago, we had done a lockdown drill, and there were elements of the drill that didn't meet our satisfaction. Primarily, when classrooms lock down, they close the blinds, they turn off the lights, they make themselves as least conspicuous as possible, and they are ready to respond to any further commands. So we have a lockdown procedure that promotes situational awareness so that if we have a threat on our east end of campus and we can evacuate kids off the west end of campus, we'll get them out of here as opposed to sitting in a locked room. That drill had too much activity on campus, within the classrooms. It was locked down securely, but too much activity. So we had another one. So it was an extra drill that we had. At the same time, we had police that came out to respond to an incident that we had that got reported last week. And that incident involved the allegation that a student had brought a knife to school. There was no allegation that the knife was used in any kind of a threatening way, but that a student had possession of a knife at school, had given that knife to another student, and that other student had reported it to their parents and guardians. And so the police were reporting that incident and some ancillary things around that when they came out. The result of that is we did confirm that there was a student that had brought a knife to school, didn't use it in a threatening way, was taken off campus by another student and retrieved by those parents and guardians. And so when we have things like a possession of a weapon at school is a misdemeanor offense, unless it's used in a more aggressive way. And so we had the police out to investigate that. And then, like I said, there were some ancillary issues around the knife itself, but that was the reason they were out. So typically we will, if we have a large amount of police presence out, we will notify families that it is not an active threat, but we usually don't get into too much about what it is. But we want to make sure that if we do have police here, that parents know whether or not kids were placed in any danger. And in this incident, they were not. So I think that answers that question. Question says, what about a threat from a child bringing a gun to school? Not exactly sure the specific of that question. We have not had any children that have brought guns to school ever in the 20 years that I've been here. So if there was any rumors to that effect, there's no information. Was that how it was phrased? Okay. Yeah. So if you asked that question, you had some more specificity to that. But yeah, we do not have any information that anybody has brought a gun to school. Like I said, the incident that happened was being investigated yesterday or Tuesday was in regards to a knife. And then we can have a comment in here about, yeah, it was a comment in here. Yes, that had to do with the suicidal thoughts that were reported among 7th graders. And the comment was that it is pretty common, especially with COVID, and that it hadn't been talked about in the past, and they commend the schools for talking about it more transparently. Yeah, if I can just comment on that really briefly, there is a requirement that students receive suicide prevention education each year in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades, so that we do have an open talk with that. There's parents that have some concerns that by talking about it, you create it. There's no research or studies to support the conversations about suicide prevention increasing the levels of suicide. It does increase the levels of talk because it allows students to, if they're feeling that way, not to keep it in and to have a resource. We've also seen among our middle schoolers in particular that the "I'm going to kill myself" phraseology is replacing the "I'm just not feeling, I'm not having a good day." There's a lot of attention that is given to students, especially those seeking attention, for saying those things. For us, we don't presuppose their motives, and so we go through these suicide assessments. Very few of them result in a student that is in imminent harm for themselves. So we look at things like, do they have a plan? Do they have a mode to do it? Do they have a place? Have they thought about these types of things? And oftentimes it's these flippant comments that need to produce a serious result. So I think there's some truth into that perception from that parent. So I appreciate that. Yep. Okay. Last piece that I wanted to share with you guys has to do with parent engagement. And what we saw here, and these were some results that we delved in with our teachers more about, because the question was satisfaction on parent engagement. And we saw a big drop in our teachers' perception of satisfaction with parent engagement. And within the elementary students and the middle school students, pretty consistent results year after year. Really high on our elementary. We see a lot more of our elementary parents engaged with the school, both physically and communication wise, and a little bit less so, but still a high level of engagement. I would look at that 71% of engagement of parents and hold that up to any other middle school around. And parents that are still staying engaged with their kids in middle school is a good sign. But we did delve into the teachers piece and we asked them, what are you seeing? Because as a school, we're seeing parents that are re-engaging with the school, like as a school leadership. Keely was here for Art Day, and during that time, you saw had to be hundreds of parents that were here supporting kids, doing really interesting, exciting things. We talked to the kids today at the assembly. They had so much fun, learned so many things. So we're seeing more parents coming to campus. And when the teachers delineated that, they were talking about parents that will come and be volunteers and parents that engage with them when they send out messages. And their perception, and it wasn't throwing stones because they've shared that they feel the same way about themselves, is they're tired. And so you have some folks that have been through very trying times with their kids. The kids are back at school and there's this feeling of, I'm still trying to get my legs underneath me. And so there's a kind of a fatigue factor. And our hope is as we start moving back in to how we engage with one another, that both the staff and the parents, all the adults in these kids' lives, are going to find some new energy. So that's kind of their perception, what they were saying. And they weren't saying in a critical way, they were saying in more matter of fact. So any parents want to chime in on whether you feel tired? I see a lot of head nods in the room. So and then the other piece that we looked at, and this is something we were really pleased about actually, is communication with teachers. And one of the challenges that we had over the years was always had some strong results from elementary parents saying, okay, I have really good communication with my teachers. And there was a lot of complaints about communications with teachers as they moved into middle school. Part of that's the function of when you're in elementary school, there's one teacher to talk to, and it's really easy to maintain that communication. You can talk about multiple issues. When you move to middle school, you start getting, even in a small school like ours, you can have 4 or 5 teachers throughout for a kid. Much more difficult to do. When we hit COVID, the middle school team did a really good job of creating a cohesive communication plan with parents, so that not only was there regular proactive messaging that was there was current Google Classroom and places to access both lessons and materials. And so that time, as difficult as it was, really was able to solidify a stronger communication plan that they've carried over. And so if you have a kid in middle school, you'll see once a week, you get more of a generic push of here's everything that's happening in every subject, here's the resources for it. And then within that, you still have the regular communication. And so we are seeing an increase in satisfaction on that, 12% over the prior year. And the teachers, like I said, are working really hard to make sure that they're engaging parents in as partners. And then communication with the school, we see a slight decrease in that. We were very communicative during COVID to try to keep people connected and involved. And so this is telling us that there's a room for improvement. We still are at that 4 out of 5 or 9 out of 10, depending on the age level. But we have looked at, as part of our plan for next year, improving the way we use social media. Because what we're realizing is that our website has stuff that sometimes people will go to, but very rarely. Our phone messages, even when I had my own kids here, my wife wouldn't even listen to them. There's a difficulty in those push messages going out, because if there are too many, they get ignored. And you guys have a lot going on. And so we're going to try to look at tailoring some of these messages to places you're more apt to look and engage with. And that's probably social media. And then if there's more information you want to know, is have that in other places. So that'll be one of our goals next year, is to increase that. And we also want to use social media to increase the school's profile. We had, prior to COVID, an enrollment that was probably about 570, right around there. When COVID hit, big exodus of folks that either moved out of the region, moved into alternate school settings that still had more access to being at school. And we saw a backfill of a large number of those people, but at the same time, a lot of instability within our families and our school community. So that number, when we drop down to about 480 at one point, has crept up closer to 490, nearing 500, but still way down from where we were before. And so our goal is to get that up, because if we have more students enrolled in our school, we can offer more programs and services and access to that. So one of our selfish goals on that is to get a few more kids here. So if you know of any that want to transfer, come have and see us. Yeah. And then the takeaways that we have from this is that our kids, despite being out of COVID for quite some time, are still struggling with those impacts. So they're struggling with the impacts of social media that I believe are very COVID related. And it's impacting them both academically and emotionally. And so if you look at those satisfaction rates of the educational program, they are relatively high, but our student performance is not returned to pre-COVID levels. And so if you were part of the previous discussion when we talked about the dashboard, you can see that we're doing good comparatively to a lot of other places, but we're not doing well by our own standards. And so still got some work to do on that. We actually, one of the reasons we were late opening this up today is we were giving the kids a big pep talk about their big test that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. So we do have our CASP testing that's coming up that will be measuring the important measurement for us as far as a year-to-year growth. And so you'll be hearing about those results. Sadly, they take a little time, so early part of next year, those will come back. And that despite the fact that we've increased supports on all sides, we are still having those struggles. So part of our planning for next year is looking at more or different ways to support both sides of that, the academic piece and the emotional, social emotional piece. So that's all of that. A lot of information. Anybody have any questions, either you guys here or online? Did we miss any? All right, so I think we're okay at the moment. So I'm going to go through just the last piece I want to share with you is we have some really cool things coming up at the end of this school year. So if you haven't been paying attention, we're almost in May and we finish up the first week in June. So we are coming down that home stretch of the school year. And if you've been at San Pasquale, we pack a lot into that end part of the year. So your teachers will be communicating out specific things with you. But a couple things to keep in mind, if you haven't noticed, we've got our last middle school dance of the year coming up this Friday night. If you want to feel good about San Pasquale, come peeking out a middle school dance. It kind of reminds me of like the 50s. Frankenstein dancing like this, you know, it's really fun. So if you ever get a chance, we'd love to have you kind of peek in the door and see that. Cinco de Mayo is the next Friday. So we are bringing back, first time since COVID, our traditional Cinco de Mayo event. So I'm sure you've seen some information that have come out. We've got a lot of our kids that are dancing, a lot of art that's been created. But it's essentially a mega potluck that we have here. And it's Cinco de Mayo, so 5/5 at 5 p.m. We would love to have you there and join us. The following Sunday, so May 7th at 4 o'clock, PTO is having a recruiting event. So if you've thought about being part of PTO, they'll probably give you something to eat and drink there and have a good time. So take a look at the PTO recruiting event that's on May 7th. As I mentioned before, our state testing, CASP testing, starts Monday, May 8th. Slightly different scheduling than we've seen in the past. The elementary kids, so our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders will go that first week. And then you'll see our middle schoolers that'll start their testing the next week. Testing will take about 3 weeks altogether with makeup tests. Important on those days that your kids get to sleep early, have a great breakfast, a healthy breakfast, and the whole deal. It's important also to come on time because if kids do come late, oftentimes we won't disrupt the testing environment and they'll kind of be in limbo for a little bit and have to make it up. So important for testing stuff to come on time. We've got a board meeting on the 9th of May. PTO on Friday, May 12th. Has a mother-son movie night. Again, an event that has not happened for a very long time. So if you are a mother with a son that would like to come, they're showing the Lego movie as a grown-up. It's one of the better kid movies that I've seen. So we have later in May, PK through 5th grade has open house. Night for your kids to show off all the stuff that they've done. So hopefully you'll reserve that night to come be with us. And then May 30th at school, and we'd welcome parents to come see it. It's our BMX Step It Up assembly. So you guys may have heard I'm sure you did. The PTO did Step It Up instead of the Apex Assembly to raise money. Kids were super excited about it, and by all accounts, it raised more money than our previous Apex events did. And we were supposed to have our big rah-rah dance party BMX assembly prior to spring break. But as you may have noticed, it rained a lot, and BMX jumpers do not like to jump in the rain. So they postponed that. So we'll have that on May 30th. Like I said, you're welcome to join us. And then really cool event, June 1st, our senior walk. It's a event that we bring back former students. So it's our alumni from San Pasqual who are graduating high school this year. We have a big parade for them. We cheer for them. They get up and they tell us where they're going, what their next steps in their life are, whether it's college or military or trade school or hit the lottery, whatever they've done. We find out their next steps. And then they come talk to our 8th graders and they give them the "I wish I knew then what I know now" kind of speech. And it's really impactful. So if you've got an 8th grader, we encourage parents to stick around for that. If you've got somebody who is graduating high school, please make sure they know about it. It's first thing in the morning on June 1st. On the opposite end of the spectrum, if you have a kindergartner coming to school, we have a new screening procedure. And so June 1st, screening procedures after school. So I think it starts up around 1:45, 2 o'clock-ish. You should have received an invite for that. But if you have a new kindergartner, keep that open. Next PTO meeting, June 2nd. Our last awards assembly of the year is June 6th. And then, as I mentioned earlier, June 8th is our last day of school. And that's when we have our 8th grade promotion that evening. So like I said, a lot of stuff in a short period of time. And there'll also be a little bit of learning going on in there too. So we've got a lot of fun things, a lot of academic things going on. So Jenny, did I miss anything else in the chat? Any other questions? Open house is May 25th. And I believe is at 5:30. Can you check the time? Yeah, so May 20th. Yeah, 5:30 on May 25th. And that's a Thursday. So right. Anyone have any other questions about anything we talked about today or any burning questions on your mind? All right. Hearing and seeing none, we'll wrap this up. I really do appreciate you guys for your time. I know that you are super busy and it takes an effort to get engaged. And so we really appreciate your partnership. I really appreciate your support. We love your kids and we're looking forward to an end of a good school year. So thank you guys very much for joining us. And if there's anything we didn't get to or something that comes up later, please don't be shy. Mrs. Z and I practically live here. So we are here quite often. So come by and see us if you have any questions or anything we can help you out with. Appreciate it. You guys have a great one and we'll see you soon. Bye.